Welcome to the Beesies.
I'm Abby.
I'm Brittany.
I'm Jenny.
And I'm Mackenzie.
Remember the college days when you were best friends with your roommates?
We would come home and talk about anything and everything together.
We miss this phase so much that we decided we needed this quality roommate time again.
So welcome to the Beesies. Come over and get cozy with your new favorite roommates.
I want to just share with you guys really quickly before we get into everything about seeing Renee rap live.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know that happened.
Yeah, it was a spiritual experience for me. And if there is a God, it exists in Renee rap. Like, I love her. And she's the most talented human I've ever witnessed with my eyes. And so I'm such a happy girl because I saw her live for the first time.
I love that
amazing.
so much. It looked so fun. It was just you and Lauren and Michaela that went?
Mm-hmm.
That's so
Yep,
fun.
and we met some new friends who just moved to Arizona from New Jersey. They were standing behind us, and we kind of formed a group to make sure we saved each other's spots because it was just like a standing general admission. Like, it was like a free concert, so we were getting people pushing us, trying to get in our way, and we were like, no, we must stand our ground. So,
Who else was playing? Weren't there a bunch of artists?
Remy Wolf was first, and then it was Renee, and then the headliner was Zed. So, yeah. I personally, Zed's cool. He has a lot of great songs, obviously, and has produced a ton of music with a ton of people, and so it's a fun vibe because all the music he plays, you know it, but he's a DJ, and a lot, I'm not the type of person who just wants to go and see a DJ on stage for an hour and a half. So the fact that he was the headliner made me sad because then Renee only got 45 minutes versus me. I was like, I am here to see her. An hour and a half of her, please.
Bring me Renee.
That was the only sad part, but the hype, it's worth the hype because she is incredible. So
She's very talented. She is so talented. I still haven't watched Mean Girls.
Me neither. I want to watch it.
You guys.
I know. I need to watch it.
Talking about this though too, because Michaela and Lauren haven't seen it yet either, and so I was like, okay, so instead of Bachelor this week, let's just have everybody over to watch Mean Girls.
Honestly,
because that's a need at this point. That's
and it's the same
must.
Time. It's 2 hours. Yeah,
2 hours.
We really should. That'd be a fun
Same
girls'
thing.
night.
So that'll
or
be
we
coming
should
up
just
soon.
plan a girls' night. I love that.
Yeah, that too.
That's
but
amazing.
yeah, that was my weekend. And tonight, I don't think we're going to go, unfortunately, but I'm trying to convince Andrew to go see Mumford and Sons at the same festival. So
that would be fun.
we'll see. We'll see if any of you want to join. Hit me up in the next hour.
You're tell me right now, actually.
Yeah, we'll make a plan.
In the
as
next
we're
hour,
speaking.
while we're recording, you have to decide.
And by the time this comes out, we'll already know the answer whether or not we went. But for this moment, it's a mystery.
That's so true.
So
That sounds like vibes.
yeah.
Kenzie, Jenny, anything fun from your week?
I don't think so. I can't even remember.
Yeah, I don't really remember this week.
I'm
basically in final season already.
Oh.
This semester's just insane. So
it's
I'm
all
just
a blur.
yeah, I just be outlining stuff and studying and vibing. Oh, I went to the movies twice. But
What'd
one
you
of the
see?
movies I slept through.
Oh.
Monkey Man. I slept through Monkey Man. And then I saw The First Omen, which, PSA to everyone, it's a prequel. Which you don't need to watch the one that it comes before, but the ending of it, something happened, and I was like, huh? But apparently it made sense if you knew it was a prequel. And I was like, oh, okay. But it was crazy. If you like scary movies, you should watch it.
Wait, is that the one with Sydney Sweeney in it?
No, that's Immaculate.
Oh, yeah.
But I also saw that. And they're all kind of Immaculate and First Omen are kind of the same exactly.
Oh, weird.
but the first Omen's better. Also, I saw Immaculate and it was not believable. I'm sorry for Sydney. Like, I'm sorry to say this, but Sydney as a nun wasn't believable to me.
No, not
And
at all.
I was like, I can't get into the movie. Like, this isn't believable. And like, you know how there's that TikTok that says that she has like a sleepy voice? Like, it's so true.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, seeing her acting, I don't know, I was just not impressed. Sorry,
Yeah.
Sydney.
I get that. Like, you're like, I already know too much about you to know that you, or to think that you could be a nun.
That's what's so interesting about like some like actors and actresses is like they almost fit like a role so well that like one, they either only play that or if they play something different, it's like not believable. Like everyone always says that about like Ryan Reynolds and The Rock, how they like play the same character in everything. And so it's like Sydney Sweeney is almost falling into that same category, but then when she tries to do something else and like, which is technically what people would want, it's still not believable. So it's like
Right.
Yeah.
catch-22.
At least as a nun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a hard time with scary movies sometimes. I got to be in the mood for them.
I do wonder how many times can like a scary movie be made before it's just the same plot over and over again.
I
I don't know,
mean,
the scary movies right now, they're the like most creative ones compared to all the
Yeah.
other movies that are just
literally
remakes
repeat. Yeah.
of everything.
Yeah, they're all repeats.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll have
Just
to
like-
try some out.
I can only be scared so many times. But that is why I appreciate a different type of like scary movie. Like I think I loved A Quiet Place because I just thought this is so different than everything else.
Yeah, it's very
Yeah.
unique.
Yeah.
Oh, another update. I've decided I'm into sports.
Oh.
Oh,
Okay.
women's basketball?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, me
Oh,
too.
like watching sports?
Not
specifically
watching.
TikTok highlights.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
TikTok.
Okay.
I like to watch like emotional fan edits of Paige from Yukon and Caitlin Clark.
Yes.
And it's like, don't be a stranger. Like,
Okay,
that
I get
kind of
the
stuff.
like sexy edits. Like it's all like
Oh.
to the Weekend songs, and it's
Oh.
like edits
Oh,
of them.
you're
And
getting
I
the
get-
thirst traps.
I get the emotional, like they're best friends, but they're on different teams.
But now it's like opening up. Like now my TikTok is like showing me, like it keeps showing me UCLA men's volleyball highlights, and I'm like, wait, this is lit.
That's so fun.
And like it keeps showing me the edits of Kendrick Lamar's bar where he's like, I'm just big me with like sports people and like LeBron being the best, and I'm like, I'm so into this now. So I'm a sports girly now.
Yeah, Caitlin Clark is playing in 30 minutes.
We gotta
Gotta be
hurry
done
this
for
up.
you to go see her.
I'm going over to my parents. Well, I will not be watching. I'll be playing with my niece, but everyone else will be watching.
Same.
Okay. Speaking of TikTok, have you guys seen the kid who got an octopus?
Like a
No.
pet.
No.
You haven't. So let me give you the highlight reel. So there's this kid in Oklahoma obsessed with octopus. So his dad was like, let's get you an octopus. So they did everything they needed to, got an octopus for him. And apparently you just have to like call your local aquarium and they order it for you, which is crazy. It feels like it should be way harder to get an actual octopus.
Yeah.
But then they got the octopus and the octopus laid eggs. And they were like, there's no chance that they were fertilized. Like, it's okay. Don't worry about it. But the sad part apparently is once an octopus lays eggs, it basically only, like, all it does is to support the eggs. So it will kill itself essentially because it just starves itself. So it only lives for like 2 more months, which the octopus is still alive. And this was like 2 months ago. So that's crazy.
Oh no.
But now all the eggs are hatching and there's like 50 of them.
Oh no.
And
so
so-
they just have so many octopuses
Yes.
aside.
All the little octopussies. And so
I know.
But yeah, so I'm sure if you look it up on TikTok, I was looking into it with my brother the other day, and I'm sure there's like way more updates by now. But at the point we were watching on Thursday, all of the eggs were like hatching as we spoke. So it was like,
Ooh.
it's
Oh my
kind of
gosh.
crazy. Like, can you imagine just being like the best parents in the world being like, I'm going to get my kid an octopus. And now you have an octopus that may
An
die
aquarium.
and 50 baby octopus.
Yeah. Like living in your house.
Oklahoma.
Yeah, in Oklahoma, out of all places.
I'm calling PETA.
You know what?
Oklahoma was Tiger King.
I
I'm
was
not
gonna
surprised.
say, yeah.
Oh,
We're doing
true.
some
Man,
interesting stuff over there.
I
have no
believe that
desire to ever
everybody
go
in
there.
Oklahoma owns exotic animals now.
That's where my granny's from.
oh, Granny. Did she have an octopus
out,
or a
Granny.
tiger?
Nope.
That's good.
On the bright
Jacob's-
side, now he'll have an octopus to replace the
However many
dying
months.
one.
Yeah.
You know, like he
Jacob's,
can pick one of the babies and then maybe give the rest away to like the aquarium.
Yeah.
Jacob's
know.
grandpa's brother, he lives in Texas, not Oklahoma, but he owns an exotic animal farm.
What kind of animals?
Like zebras,
Oh,
Interesting.
things like that.
that's a little. I don't know how I feel about it.
I think I don't know, like Tiger King really played with my head in 2020 and changed a lot of my perspective on like zoos and stuff. Well, in general, my perspective on that was changing. So I don't know how I feel about those things anymore. But it's also not my area to feel about them. So
Yeah, I never actually watched Tiger King.
I watched Tiger King
Really?
and I was like, I don't get that hype.
time to start. I don't think it was that great. Like I'm not into the hype, but it definitely makes me think about things like through that lens every once in a while. That I'm like,
Yeah,
Tiger
that's
King.
what. Did you
There's
guys
just
ever
something
watch?
about like white trash people that is so fascinating.
you
That's
might
so
need
true.
to start watching it, Brittany.
Maybe I should. Did you guys ever watch Blackfish? It was
Yeah.
a SeaWorld documentary.
Yes.
Yeah, that F's with your mind too.
Yeah. Exactly.
Anyways.
All those. Yeah.
On to other things that F with your mind.
Uh-huh. Let's get to the point of why
Yeah.
we're here today.
Welcome back. We today will be talking more specifically about mixed faith relationships as a whole, primarily friendships, because obviously this is a podcast where we're friends and we try and focus things there. So again, we asked y'all for some questions. This was following up our episode we did a little over a month ago now, talking about growing up Mormon and our experiences with that. And there was definitely a lot of follow-up that y'all had. But we also talked about in even that episode saying how like it would be interesting even just for us to talk more about the friendship side of things. So that's kind of what we're going to do today. And then depending on how much time we have, maybe talk about just some of the other questions that y'all had. But that's where we're going to start. So
Yay.
first question is, I don't feel like we need to really like preface this episode with anything. Like last time we kind of gave our disclaimer of like, if you don't want to listen, don't. But like really this is just, I think this is beneficial for anyone no matter what phase of faith you're in, because
Yeah.
people have differences in life and it's good to accept those. So that's our disclaimer is listen. Anyways, what were your initial thoughts about your friends leaving? And I feel like we could probably all speak to this because we've all been in a place where like someone left a church before us.
Right. At one point or another, like we were all still active and had someone like leave before
Yeah.
us. So, yeah.
I'll say for like Abby and Kenzie, and maybe this is like so desensitized, but by the time that like y'all had left or I found out, like I just cared about you in the sense of like, oh, I hope you guys are doing okay, because I've seen so many people go through that transition that I know it's not an easy thing. And so it wasn't ever like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they left, or like, that's so crazy, I wonder why. It was just like, that's hard. Like, I hope you guys are doing okay. Because it's like, that's such a world shifting thing. So, yeah.
That is so sweet. Thank you for sharing that, because not many people think about that.
Well, yeah. And maybe it's just because like I've had a lot of family who left like years before. Well, here's the thing about leaving, and maybe you two could speak to this more. I think for some people it's so gradual, and then other times it's like all at once. Like it is a night and day difference, but there's not a ton of in between. Like it either can take years and years, or it's 2 weeks we're out kind of thing.
Right.
And so I think the part that a lot of people forget about is they just like, especially if you're like super in a religion, you just see someone leave and like maybe it's scarier. It's like, oh man, like I hope it's not being more normalized or something. But it's like what they forget is like they've probably been going through years or months even of like an inner turmoil that is really hard. And that's like sad. So anyway, sorry, I totally cut you off.
No, yeah, that is a big, well, I never even thought about that like years ago. Before I really had anybody leaving, if I saw somebody like from a distance that I knew, then I was always like, oh, that's so sad. But I never thought much about what they were going through in that sense, because I didn't have that like lens. But as time went on and I became a little bit more like progressive in my beliefs, then I started to understand more of what like a faith crisis kind of looked like and was. And that, yeah, that is really hard. So a lot of people I don't think really think about that at first. But I know for some of my friends, when they left before me, it was like shocking. I was like, oh my gosh, like I would never have expected that from them. But that was more because I thought I had an idea of like, I don't know, their beliefs. And then when all of a sudden that changed and I was like, wait, I'm confused. Not so much like, how dare they, but just like, wait, what? Like, I would have never expected this coming from you. And then in other people, I was always like, oh yeah, that was kind of expected. So it kind of depends to what that looks like, on what their faith journey looks like on the, from the outside perspective of like people's reactions to it, I feel like. Because some people suffer for a long time silently, and some people are very vocal about it, and so it doesn't come out of like you expect it in a way.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, that makes sense. Kenzie,
So-
Jenny, what are your thoughts? Yeah, what?
It's our how we reacted, or like what, like our initial
Like your initial
feelings?
thoughts.
Yeah, just
thoughts
as
and
your
feelings.
initial
Yeah.
thoughts about friends leaving.
Okay, so with Kenzie and Abby, I'm trying to even remember with Kenzie. I remember like my feelings with Kenzie were like what you said, Brittany. I was like, because I feel like I knew you had stopped going. Like I didn't care. I was just like, it actually impacted me a lot in the sense where I was like, oh my gosh, like things hurt her. How could I be in like something that hurts my best friend? And then with Abby, that was, I was really shocked when I learned you left the church, just because like, but shocked in the sense that I just never thought you would. Like you were someone I never like saw that happening, and like was it during COVID? Like
Yeah, a
when
little
was
bit.
it?
Like it was
Well, it
in
was kinda
2021.
after. Wait,
No, was it
Yeah, like-
2022?
it was,
It was 2022.
yeah.
Yeah, I just remember because I feel like during that period we all weren't talking as much. So I was just like, whoa, like Abby, that's crazy.
Like,
But
I
not
had
in a
no
bad
idea.
way. I was
Yeah.
just like, because you were one in like Tucson, I feel like you were one of the more
Like active.
like defending
Yeah.
of stuff a lot. So I was like, that was one
Somebody
where
had
I was
to
like,
defend the things that you were, the misinformation you guys were saying. The
So-
bad things you were saying.
that was one where I felt more like, I want to know the tea, like what
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah. And that's like exactly what I'm saying. Like, I think I shocked a lot of people because I was one of those like silently having only conversations with like a small group of people about it. And so like you just never expect it from those people who like on the outside appear to be so faithful, and then on the inside they're not. Like, it comes from insecurity, guys.
I think I kind of black out on some of these things, because now that I'm like thinking more back to it, I think it still wasn't super shocking, because I think we had some conversations.
Yeah.
And so like it wasn't like, oh, not super surprised. The only thing is maybe how quickly y'all did, because I even remember like, because I think just that year in January, you two went through the temple with me.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was just a few months later that y'all left, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Which
and
is crazy
actually,
to
it's
think
interesting
about.
that you bring that up, because one of the things I was struggling with so much was that I like really wanted to go to the temple with you.
Really?
And I felt really sad. Like, I don't want to put this on anybody, but I felt a lot of like sadness for you seeing like all of our friends leaving and being like, nobody's going to be there for Brittany on a day that she finds like to be really important to her, and like I need to be there for her. And so I like really, because I was feeling very like uncomfortable around that time, but I was also like in it until I wasn't. And so because I was still in it, I was like, I'm gonna be there for Brittany. So that's funny.
Yeah. No, I totally get that though, because there's times now that I feel that way. Like where I'm like, oh, like, what about this person in my life? Like when they get married or whatever it is, like, you know, but so I relate to that thought because that's a very understandable thing.
Yeah. And I do think, just like one more thing touching on this for me in my brain, that there is like a little bit of a grieving process when you have a friend who like leaves the church that I experienced a little bit. And it was like, it was more about thinking, you know, because community is so important in the church. And I had a good experiences within my community of like girls camp, young women's, all that stuff. And so there was a little bit of grieving that I experienced when my friends were leaving, that I was like, wait, our kids aren't going to like go to girls camp together. And like, it takes away some of those experiences that I was looking forward to that don't necessarily have ties to the church, or like, like you can still have them removed from the church, but there's still so many of those ties that I was like, wait, you're leaving me in a way, because now I have to go do these things by myself, or my kids won't have someone to play with at this sort of situation. Like, you know, and I think that's like kind of natural for a lot of people to feel like, you know, if you have kids, like, oh, what about it? Like my kid is going to be baptized and you're not going to be there, or they're not going to be baptized with them, or whatever, you know, those kind of experiences and stuff.
Yeah.
What have been your guys's most judgmental thoughts ever?
Definitely back in high school, like and like part of college, like when I would see that like some members would like go drinking or, you know, party and stuff, like my thought was like they don't want to follow the rules. Like the rules it's easier to not follow the rules.
Yeah.
And like that's why people leave.
Yeah. And I also felt like, since, you know, I was a progressive Mormon, that like it was my duty to like be that person that could help build like nuance in the church and stuff. So it was like, one, like very judgmental of me to think that they're just lazy and they don't want to follow the rules. But then two, that I also, here I am judging them, but I also have like this like divine mission to help them. So
That's exactly how I felt in high school. Like when people from church would like drink or like party, I was like, wow, like you're so basic. Like it's so easy to just follow those rules. Like I always have been a supporter of someone leaving over like doctrinal issues and like things like that. But like those simple, hand in quotation marks, rules of like not drinking, I was like, wow, like that's so lame to like break rules because you just don't want to. Yeah.
That's so funny. I think in high school, I didn't care at all, because like when you're so young, I'm kind of like, oh, we're all just still forming our own opinions and thoughts. And so like I wasn't judgmental of my friends who did go to church and were like, what's the word? Like Jack Mormons and stuff like that. I was just like, that just is what it is. But as I got older and like got like more of, I don't know, felt more confident in the things that I believed in. I like, I'll be honest, I have a hard time with like a 1 foot in, 1 foot out mentality. Like, I am just somebody, unfortunately, who is kind of like all or nothing. And so seeing people be like, yes, I'm very active. Yes, I'm still faithful. Yes, I care, blah, blah, blah. And then like do something that is against what I was like grown up with as a standard, like keeping to those standards. I'm like, how can you do that? You know it's a sin. So like you are actively choosing to sin by doing this, and then you're going to go to church tomorrow. Like, it made me like really angry and stuff like that. And I've worked through that now, and I don't care. Like, to each their own, and like everybody needs to do what makes them happy. But that was a really hard thing for me, was to be like, it was just like a outward expression for me to be able to determine where your testimony was at.
Yeah.
Which is like the most judgmental thing ever.
Well, that's what's so hard with so many like rules, quote unquote, that are outward. Is like, it is so easy to judge where people are at without actually knowing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like,
and in my mind, I was like, if you want to do that, then just like stop going to church. Like, just admit what you're doing and like accept that you're leaving, and stop trying to play this like half in, half out type thing. Like, that was very much where I was at for a while. But I would never say that to anybody, because I also like, I'm a bitch and I know it. So, like, that's so mean. But in my head.
Funny.
Yeah.
So someone asked a question, what is the one major church topic that ex-Mormon and active Mormon BZs disagree on? How do you handle disagreements? Because I think, like, I don't know, like, clearly there's like not a line, but like there is a reason why Abby and I chose to leave, and there's a reason you guys are choosing to stay. So like, where is that line?
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Well, I think what's so hard though, because like I read that question, I was like, I don't feel like we talk about that really. Like we, at least I don't think we like get in disagreements about stuff, because maybe we just like you're saying, there's a line and we just don't really approach it. And so it's like a taboo thing. Or I think there's honestly just a lot of things that we probably do agree on. And like, even like reasons people would normally leave, we probably agree on. But like you're saying, like there's something that's like kept us even because of that, or had you leave because of that? Mm-hmm. That's such a non-answer. I don't know.
So would you guys say it's like maybe like the weight of different things in the church?
Potentially, yeah. I also think like, I don't know, for me, like when Abby was talking about like the 1 foot out, 1 foot in, I'm like, that's me to a T. Like because, and I think I've kind of always been this way, and I'm pretty sure I talked about this on the last episode that we talked about growing up Mormon, but if there's something I don't agree with, I just won't agree with it, and I'm not going to believe it. And like, I'll be vocal about that. Like, easiest one to go to is like marriages between a man and a woman. I don't believe that. I don't think that's true. And I will tell anyone that. And so it's like, and I feel like probably all of you guys would agree with that too. And so like, again, that's kind of one of those like hot topic debates, or like a very common one, but I feel like we all agree on it. And so it's not even that, like, for me, it's because that's very important to me, honestly. But I just like literally don't think the church is right on it. And so it's like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, like this is such a good question, because I have no idea. Like, I've always, and this is like a harsh way to put it, but like I've always wanted to know like what you guys, and this word is too hard, but like what you guys would consider us being like hypocrites for in like staying. Because like, I don't know, I feel like everything that a lot of people have dealt with like in 2020 with like leaving, like a lot of those things I've thought about like my whole life, honestly. Like,
They weren't like
but
new to you.
yeah, and but I don't ever have like, I guess my answer for staying is like I still have like a really strong testimony, I would say, like in Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And that this is the only religion I know. But when I see other religions, I don't feel like they're as, and this is so funny to say because culturally it doesn't feel that way, but I don't feel like they're as forgiving as we are in some senses. And I do feel like the Book of Mormon has like some cool things about Jesus. But I don't, there's like so many things, like I'm very uncomfortable currently and have been in being a member. Like I'm very uncomfortable with the fact that I'm a member of this church, and like it's just a really weird thing for me, and like I struggle every day being in it, but it's like something I've felt since I was like a freshman in high school. So I don't, it's just like there's never been like something to just make me leave because I've always, I don't know, like
in a way you've
No, I get
always
that.
been living in this world where like there is something to leave over, but you still choose to stay. So you're like, the thing, like this, there being some sort of big thing that is like breaking
Groundbreaking.
everything and is your avenue to leave. You're like, I already have like worked through, like I've
shelf
known about
broke.
those. The shelf broke a long
Right.
time ago.
There was never
and
a
we're just
shelf.
working through it. Yeah.
yeah,
I think-
that is kind of how it feels. And then I do, like, I wonder like what you guys think of us, like.
Well, something
know.
that has come up in other relationships that I have with people, not you guys, but outside of this podcast and my friends, is like I don't know. I cannot, like I see the church and any other organized religion, like organization, as a business.
Yeah.
And I can't look at it any other way. And so I know people who are very spiritual, they have a very strong belief in Christ and everything like that. And I have a hard time being like, but you don't have to practice it in this like this religion that is actually this corporation, like controlling things, and you know, they have businesses, and like it feels really icky to me. And so that is like the biggest thing that I don't usually talk about that around people very often, because it is a big thing. Like I am taking something that is so sacred to them and that their faith is like rooted in, and I'm saying like it's not spiritual at all. It's just a business. Like, oh, this is like this thing that you call like sharing the gospel, that's marketing. Like this, you know, and that I think like that is just something where it's like you're never gonna agree on that if you do feel differently, because like spirituality and faith is so important to people that like it's the entity that is able to, they can express their faith in, and like that's great for them. And you know, they feel this spiritual connection to the church, to the leaders, to everything. And then like I'm like, there's no
You're like, that's actually the CEO.
There. Right. Exactly.
Sorry, that's so bad.
I know.
Well, so that's so funny that you bring that up though, because that's another thing that I feel like, and again, I'm talking about like us four now, not like greater groups, because that's something I've heard a lot of people say. But again, I kind of agree. And so it's like this question, like getting at like, what are major things you guys disagree on? It's like, I don't know that there's a lot.
Right.
So sorry, we're not spilling any tea, but because like that's one that like, duh, like it just feels like, of course it is a business. I don't know. Maybe that's terrible of me to say. But sorry. Go ahead, Kenzie. I don't have anything important to add.
For me, because like truly what pushed me to see the church in a different lens was like my own issues with like shame and stuff. So it was like more personal. I I have a lot of like grace for people still in the church because I did not leave because of like all of the like policy issues. Even though I think that those are valid reasons to leave, that's not why I left. It was maybe part of it, but my own issues were really the driving force. So I always try and remember that, like when topics about like progressive Mormons come up. But it's interesting being on the outside of the church and like Jenny, you talked about how like there's like truth in the Book of Mormon for you, and it's like for me, like I don't know how to like put this in a nice way. Like Joseph Smith is a joke. So it's like that, and that's probably like where the line is. Like you see, like kind of how Abby was talking about, like you see the spirituality in it, and I just don't.
Yeah.
And so, but it's interesting, like being on the outside. Like sometimes I do catch myself thinking, like, if I walked into a church today, a random church, and they were saying a lot of the things that Mormon church has said about gay people, I'd walk right out of that church. Like, so I'm like, why? I don't know, but I catch myself thinking those kinds of things.
Yeah.
A lot.
That's so interesting. Like, and it's so funny because what you said about Joseph Smith, that's like one of my biggest contentions with the church that I've talked to Jacob a lot, and it almost makes no sense because I also think I'm like I like don't believe in Joseph Smith, like, but then I'm like he created the Book of Mormon, so like how can I have any like holding in the Book of Mormon at all when I literally do not think of that man as like a man of God? Like I don't know. So that's just another confusing thing with me in my own head. Like so it's so weird.
Yeah, there's a lot, I think, along those lines that people, like nuanced members especially, just they're like, I don't know, there's these things I believe in, but there's these things I don't believe in, and then like, but they're connected, and you have to like wrestle with that. I don't know.
Cognitive dissonance gets ya.
But I do want to say though that I feel very, we'll touch on this a little bit. I feel very lucky that I feel like most of the reactions to me leaving the church were positive. I haven't had hardly any negative reactions. But I've joined like Facebook groups and stuff, and like there are so many stories of like families like breaking apart, marriages ending, like people being taken out of wills for leaving the church. So it's like, while the community is one of the greatest things about the church, like it's there's like also
It
I don't
can
know,
be
again,
the
it's like
worst
catch
part.
me too about it because I don't know. So it's like the church goes beyond so much more than just the gospel, the policies. It's also your community. And so I don't know.
No, that's
And
a good
I think
point.
one thing that we have all experienced together is that even though there is a difference of opinion and beliefs on all of this, like we all respect each other's opinions in that matter. Like I would never try to stand here and convince you guys of why like your connection to the church is wrong and how I see it differently than you, and like, you know, like we're always just like, oh, okay, like I disagree with that, but I totally see where you're coming from, and like that's great, you know. And we've never tried to like, at least from what I understand, I guess someone might have a different experience, but from my experience, we've never like shamed anybody about the things we believe to their face. We've never like made someone.
That was the next question: is have you ever felt pressure to leave or stay in the church because of your friends?
Yeah, and I like. I never felt pressure to leave from anybody, but like very similar to like what I was saying earlier with Brittany, that was the only situation where I was just like, if I leave the church, I'm going to lose out on these things that I've been so excited about. I'm going to lose out on like my friends' ceilings and their endowments, and I'm not going to be a part of these things anymore. And that has got into my head for a little while, but in the end, like there was never pressure too much from either side, because I think everybody that we are friends with is really good at just giving people their space and like letting someone come to a decision on their own, you know?
Yeah. Go ahead.
I know for me, I didn't really feel pressure to stay in the church from friends. I mean, I decided to like take a break from church once I graduated college, so the end of 2019, and I purposely did that because I didn't want like my friends in Tucson to like question like why aren't you going to church or something. But I know I was afraid to tell you guys, like all three of you guys, that I had taken a break from church, just because I felt different because all three of you were either married or like on the path to be getting married, and I was not married, and here I am like deciding to leave the church, and I was like, oh well, they're more faithful, like they're gonna want to be friends with like Mormon wives, and I'm neither of those things, so I was like afraid of being judged in that sense.
That makes me so sad. I feel
But
like
I think that's totally understandable. Sorry.
Oh no, that's totally no, you're good.
Because the point in where like, because you left years before me, and at that point it was very different. Whereas like when I left, there were many people on both sides. Like we were split 50-50, and it wasn't like I'm the only one leaving. So there is a lot of pressure in that, I think. Like I understand that.
Yeah. If I ever feel pressure to leave or stay, it's so internal. Like it is not because of anything that like other people have said or done. And I'm thinking more broad now, like friends and family. Because I would honestly say at this point in my life, like more than half of the people I associate with, like closely friends and family, have left the church. So it's like tipping that way. And so like when I do find out like maybe someone else has left, honestly, one of my thoughts is always like, am I a freaking idiot? Like, and that's just being so vulnerable, but it's like, okay, like what are they seeing, or like what's the difference for them? Like why haven't I gotten there? Or like am I just there and I'm like in denial, which could totally be it too. I also like how you were talking earlier about like, oh, if people were like shocked that you left or not. I genuinely think if I ever did decide to leave the church, I don't think anyone would be shocked. Maybe I'm totally wrong, but I think it's because I'm so, like Jenny is, upfront about like, yeah, these are the issues I have. But anyways, that's kind of a tangent. But yeah, I never feel pressure from other people to leave or stay. It's, if I'm feeling that pressure, it's all from my own little brain.
Yeah.
I've never felt like direct pressure from like friends. I've felt uncomfortable in certain moments with like certain people in the way they would talk about things. But that wasn't really pressure. The only time I've never felt pressure from you guys, like to do anything. And then just going back to to Mackenzie when you left, and like I was like learning more. That was the only time, friendship wise with friends, that I felt like, I remember I was living in Colorado when I was like thinking about it a lot for some reason, and like I don't know why, like it like affected me so deeply, but I was just like, I was like, she felt so much like pain in this. And I remember like I remember like sitting in Colorado, like on a trail, like at a bench, like I think I was crying to Jacob. Aww. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I can't be in this. Like it hurt her. But like I feel like that's the most like pressure that I've ever like felt. But it wasn't pressure, it was just like my emotions.
Well, but that is,
you're just like Joseph Smith going into nature.
Yeah. That's a very real question though, of like, how can I be in this when it's hurt all these people that I love? Like,
right.
Genuinely, that's something I feel like that's in my mind a lot. like, especially with like my brother being like, oh my gosh, how can I be a part of something that is so hateful towards him?
Yeah.
So,
And it's so interesting because, like, because that feels hypocritical in a way. Like, so many people are hurt by it. Like, that's what I've been struggling with, like, for the past, like, 8 years. Like, because I've been personally hurt by it, but I guess, like, I don't care when I've been hurt. Like, it's just something
Yeah.
that happened to me.
it's easier to
But
care
then,
about
like,
others.
so many people are getting hurt. But then, that, like, the way I, like, rationalize to myself is, like, every organization ever, everyone gets hurt. Like, the Democratic Party hurts people, like, everything, and, like, you'll never find something that doesn't hurt someone. But then that's just a rationalization.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I've been in such a flux with this religion for, like, ever in my life.
Yeah. And I had an experience too when I was still in the church with someone who was in a similar boat where, like, they even expressed to me, like, it hurts me that you guys are still in this because, like, of all the damage it's done to me, of all the damage it's done to, like, this person that I love, and I don't understand how, like, you could still be in it. And, like, my answer to them at the time was just, like, this is, like, I have to do it for me, whether I stay or whether I leave. Like, if I do it for anybody else, like, I'm never gonna, like, feel right about it. And so if I do end up leaving one day, like, I'll do it for me. But like, as much as I love you and I love, you know, these people, like, and I don't want that to happen, I need to figure it out in my own time. And, like, right now, this feels really good for me. And I'll say, like, with this person specifically, I know, like, our relationship did get closer when we did leave because there was that barrier to them of being like, this is something that, like, they are supporting that like, hurts me a lot, and I don't know how, like, to make that work in my head. And so it was, like, kind of a wall up. But still, like, this person never pressured us, and in more ways than just that, where it's like, this is how I'm sharing with you. And I think I wonder if members have, like, a lot of people have this mentality and problem that, like, if somebody is expressing their feelings or their experience about it, they immediately see it as, like, an attack. I know I used to see it that way, where it's like, this hurt me, and I'm like, well, let me defend what I believe and what I know. And it's like, no, this person is just being vulnerable with you and, like, sharing something personal to them. It doesn't have to be made into this, like, teaching moment or this like, it doesn't have to be seen as an attack. And so giving people space to, like, share experiences and to have different experiences from you is, like, really important, I think.
I think that's huge. And I was thinking about this a lot while thinking about doing this episode. There was a little while ago, this was maybe like 2 years ago at this point, I don't remember, but my mom and I think Scott and my dad kind of, but mainly my mom and I had this conversation just about, like, being respectful of where people are at, but, like, being genuinely curious too. Like how I said, when my initial thoughts for both of you was like, oh, I hope you guys are doing okay. It's like, ask people those questions, like, whether they're in the church, out of the church, whatever it is, like, it could be hard either way, or it could be great either way. But, like, care about that person in your life enough to ask them how they're doing and, like, genuinely mean it, and not have it be like, oh, I'm going to ask you how you're doing because maybe it's going to be a teaching moment, or, like, on either side, like, I can either teach you why you should have stayed in the church, or I should teach you why you should have left the church. It's like, no, let me just ask you how you're doing and talk to you because I care about you as a person, and I want to know more about your life experience, and I want to know more about your thoughts and your beliefs.
Totally.
Yeah. And one thing that is so annoying, like, people hate the people who, like, leave and then they start posting a lot about, like, why they left, and, like, all talking about the church negatively, and, like, people hate that so much, and I'm just like, get over it. And, like, think about the fact that someone has left something, like Brittany said, like think about how they feel.
Yeah.
Like they just, their whole world was toppled. Like it's like an ex but worse.
Yeah.
Like
Well, and think like when you are active, it is like a high demand religion. Like you're you're taught to think about it all the time, and you see it in everything. So it's like, of course, once you decide to leave, it's hard to like deprogram your brain to not think about it a lot. Like how many times were you encouraged to like spread the gospel on social media and stuff? So it's like we can't expect people to go from like thinking about it all the time and being encouraged to think and talk about it all the time, and then to like just not think about it at all.
Yeah. Totally.
Well, and I think there's also this message within the church from leaders about how like anything like that is Satan trying to convince members to leave and like to stray them from the path and everything. And that view, like, I don't think that's most people's intent. I think most people's intent, well, one, maybe to gain a sense of community of people who have a shared experience of wanting to leave this church. And like now they're lonely and they want to find a new community of people who relate to them. Like, you know, so that's one major thing. Another major thing is just like people need to talk about things they're going through and what's in their head to like process it, to grieve it, to make sense of it all. And when you limit all of that to just being like, this is just Satan trying to weasel its way into your heart and destroy, you know, whatever, that's the only way you can see it then.
Yeah.
You know,
There's an answer for everything.
Should we kind of switch to like talking about family and significant others?
Yeah, because I feel like we've kind of talked about the other questions.
Yeah.
So, did leaving the church impact your relationship with your significant other?
So I left 6 months before Derek did. Derek was actually the one who, like, we were driving in the car and I was just going like on and on and on about like, I hate going to church. I don't agree with anything. Why am I going to church? And he's like, you know, you could take a break from church. And I don't know why that was like the light bulb moment for me, but
You're like, oh, I could.
yeah. And so he was very supportive, but about a year or so before I left, Derek, I don't know if he'll want me to share this story, but like you know, I was getting closer to graduation, and Derek and I were talking about like, okay, like when I graduate, should we, like, is that when we should start talking about marriage? And he made a comment to me about how temple marriage was really important to him, and that was something that like he wasn't willing to budge on, was temple marriage. And at that point I don't think I had like bluntly said to myself that I would like leave the church, so it must have been like my subconscious, but I like flipped. I know I flipped on him, and I was like, what the F? Like, if you want, like, if you care so much about getting married in the temple, that's fine, but it will not be with me. That is not like that does not define me. And then like months later, I decide to leave the church. So that was like the one like tiff we kind of had. But when it came time to me deciding to leave the church, he was very, very supportive. And about 6 months later, he decided to leave as well.
What are we talking about right now?
Yeah, I don't know if I can really say that like it has changed our relationship very much, like mine and Andrew's, because we really were questioning everything and thinking about everything right alongside each other.
Yeah, that's huge.
And that was so helpful because like then there was no fights we were getting into. And it's interesting because we didn't really even talk about things very much. We more talked about things with friends around each other. So we were a part of those conversations. But like I never got this sense of like either of us was trying to convince the other person to stay for one reason or leave for one reason. We both like without communicating this, kind of just decided to let each other like figure it out on their own without pressure from the other person. And then in the end, like, and you know, we kind of say, oh, I had this thought, talk about that a little bit, but it was never this like trying to convince the other person to either stay or go or whatever. So that was great.
Did you ever feel though, like before, like when you were kind of like internally like questioning things?
Sorry.
Hello?
We hear you, Jenny.
She wants to get her discussion points in. What was I going to say? Was there ever a thought in your mind like, oh, like I can't be the one to pull the trigger.
Yeah.
I can't say anything until Andrew says anything.
There were a few months there where, first of all, I hadn't even really told him that I started questioning things like early on, until all of a sudden, like, we had a conversation with a friend, and it kind of like pushed us to have that conversation because it brought it up, and that was really great. But like, while I was going back and forth for months trying to decide, you know, really how I felt, I was also at the same time waiting for Andrew to like show me that he was also there, and like not just, oh, I have this problem, but actually like, hey, it's not only problems anymore. I think like I need to make the decision to step away. So I was waiting for him to kind of say that, because I felt like for me, I pushed him a lot when we were dating, because I was like, I know you didn't go on a mission, but I want you to like prepare like you're about to go on a mission, so that I know that you have like a strong testimony. And like, I wanted my husband to be very faithful, and like I wanted a certain type of priesthood holder in the house. So I pushed him a lot to like dedicate himself more to the church when we were dating and before we got married. And so I kind of didn't want to just be like, I'm changing things up on you, and
Gotcha.
you know, I changed my mind, like, sorry that I made you do that. Because I didn't want to feel like I was just swaying him one way or the other.
Was there ever like a fear, like, okay, if I bring this up, like this might be harmful to our marriage?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think I was more afraid to bring it up just because I was like scared of my own thoughts for a while. And it felt so final to me that I just wasn't ready to like go there. I wasn't ready to say like, I'm going to stop going to church, because I felt like I only have this decision once, and once I leave, I can't come back. I do feel differently about that now. Not that I would ever, but like there was a certain finality to it that I wasn't ready to like talk about and put into action.
Yeah.
So I can't remember what the question was, but I think that answered it.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any advice for like people in relationships who are like maybe headed in different directions or are in a mixed faith marriage or relationship?
I would say talk about it a lot. Like, and maybe that's terrible advice. I don't know, because it's also like pretty much the opposite of what Abby was just saying. But like, I've told Scott this a couple of times recently, or like over the last 6 months, and it probably will make me emotional, but like, I feel bad that like Scott is one of the people who I haven't been the most open with about where I'm at with faith, because it can be scary, and not necessarily like I'm like, oh, if I leave, he'll divorce me. Like that's not a thought I have, honestly, but like, it's just scary. It's like, it's your person, and like, it's really hard when you have been aligned on something as big as faith, and then like, maybe you're not. Like, I would even say that like where Scott and I are at, even though we're both in the church, is very different. And that can be hard at times. But what I feel like I've done a disservice to both of us with is not being honest with him about where I'm at or about things that I'm struggling with. Because like I talked about earlier, it's like, oh, you should care enough about the people around you to like ask them what they're thinking and ask them where they're at. It's like I kind of came to the realization like a couple months ago that like Scott was the one person who I like wasn't really telling where I was at. And that has made it kind of harder because it's almost like we're having to like build to a place where we can talk about like things that we agree on or disagree on and like building that trust. And I don't know, maybe he would say something different to it, but I think it's kind of like I feel like I did us a disservice and I regret not talking about where I was at more, because now it's like regaining all of that. But yeah, still like the other advice too would still be like just know that they're not trying to like sway you one way or another, especially with your significant other. Like they're the person you go to with everything, hopefully. Like whether it's you had a good day, you had a bad day, you are struggling with this big thing in the world. And so, especially with religion, they should also be that person you go to, even just for comfort. Not necessarily like, oh, I want you to teach me why. Hold on. Hi, Winnie. Not necessarily, oh, I want you to tell me like why I'm wrong or why I'm right in this. It's just that like, oh, I need you to be here as someone that I seek comfort in. So that's my advice.
Yeah.
I feel like I don't know. My advice is like
It's okay if you disagree completely with what I
I
said.
think
As she usually does.
That's okay.
wait, I keep cutting out. Am I here?
Yeah, you're good.
I can hear you.
Okay.
You're good.
My like entire laptop went away. But my advice, and it low key kind of maybe goes against church what we've been taught. But it's just like with your partner, with your spouse, like I think everyone needs to remember you're independent people, and like you can't like expect something of your spouse. Like that's been one of the hardest parts with mine and Jacob's marriage and religion. And it's been religion. Like religion has, I think, been the like hardest part, and it's made me resent church because like it's like I get the concept of how beautiful like being on the same level, blah blah blah, can be, but like it puts so much pressure, especially on women, because like men are the one that go on missions, like they like know more usually because of that, like they're just taught very differently from us, and like expecting someone to be at a certain level is really unfair, and I think you have to be independent and allow each other to be where you're going to be. And like you should, like Brittany said, like you should be able to talk to someone, like to talk to your spouse about it, but as a spouse you also like you need to be able to hold the fact in your head that when they're coming to you they're an independent person and they have an entirely different concept, and like grew up differently, like you have to be open. So I don't know, like I just really I didn't like that in the church of like you have to be at a certain level, and like you have to be at the same level to be a successful marriage, and like I don't know, it just like causes arguments and pain. And so I think you just have to remember that independence is there.
Yeah.
That was exactly what I was thinking, that like I think you're right, like the church does a huge disservice to couples, like expecting a temple marriage, expecting, oh, we're going to be faithful for the rest of time, all of our kids are going to stay in the church, none of them are ever going to leave. It's not fair. And like and I agree, Jenny, I think especially to women, because like historically women have been more subservient to men, and it kind of like puts women in boxes, and so they're afraid to speak up and say something.
Yeah, totally.
I do wonder though, like for you guys, what your thoughts on this are, because like part of me does believe that it is okay to want a certain thing like out of your marriage or out of a friendship. Like if you are just somebody who wants your spouse to be like so active, and like you want a family who's like very faithful and like a certain type of way, and if you're not receiving that, like I do kind of understand how that can be like really hurtful for that person, and how like I get why some people divorce over one spouse leaving, because it's like that wasn't what they signed up for, that's not what they wanted, and like that person leaving is changing the script and like not committing to something that they thought they like the other person was committing to. So like there's space for that in my mind as well, but at the same time, like healthy relationships work when two people learn to like adapt and adjust and grow and change like as things happen. And like in my mind, if you are willing to like divorce your spouse over like leaving a religion, did you really love them to begin with? Like, you know?
Well, and that makes me think of the conversation I had with Derek when he told me that like he was absolutely like set on getting married in the temple, because there was a time where I had to go to the bishop and give him my temple recommend because I was not temple worthy. And the shame and like that puts on you, that you are not worthy to go into the temple, it's like your entire worth has been like stripped away. It's like a horrific feeling. And so I had spent like a couple years trying to like build up my self-worth, that like, okay, I am who I am as a person, and my worth is not based on a temple recommend. And so when he said that, like, I think that that's what like triggered me, is like, no, I'm so much more than my temple recommend. I am an individual with lots of different thoughts and feelings on this.
Yeah.
And my thought, Abby, with what you said, like my genuine thoughts to that of like how there's space to want something, I genuinely think that's just kind of a toxic thing we were taught in the church. Like, I think you can want qualities in your spouse, but like religion is so personal.
Your relationship with God, it's like, that's one-on-one, dude. That's not.
Like I just
Totally.
hate. I
You
don't
can't
think you
expect
should.
another person to do anything in the end. Like, if you're gonna choose to live your life with someone else, then like that's gonna, like, you have to be understanding that each person is their own individual. It's like if you have kids, you have to understand that those kids are gonna grow up to be whoever they want to be, not who you want them to be. And like, if you do believe that, don't have kids.
You sign up for that when you have kids. Like you have no idea.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what's hard. This is like a bit of a tangent. Divorce has been making me really sad this week. But it's like,
me too.
But it's like, how, I don't like, society's so like weird. Like, how are we supposed to like only stay with one person our entire, like, how do you, like, how are you supposed to make a marriage work for decades and decades and decades? Like, when there's so many things changing around you.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's divorce has been on my mind a lot.
Oh no.
But that's like where, like I'm almost like independent to a fault. Like I feel like that goes with like everything. Like I am so chill with you doing your own thing and me doing my own thing, but we're together. And like I just think people need to do that. But I feel like that's like very, like I think I'm a little too much in that. But like that's just my mindset. I'm just like, I want to be who I am. I want you to be who you are, and like we love each other.
Yeah.
Well, and even if like a couple gets to a place where they're like, you know what, we're just going in different directions, it's like that's not like inherently like a bad thing, but like why is it so sad? I don't know. It's just it's a lot.
Yeah.
See, I feel like what Jenny was just saying, she's so independent. I feel so the opposite. Like I'm so codependent that I'm like I just love doing everything with people. And so like even the last 2 nights, like I was house sitting for my mom, and so like Scott was at home and I was there, and I was like, I'm literally just sleeping, and yet I'm so sad. Like I just miss him. And so it's like, it's so funny though, because I think that just relates to other areas too. Cause like, I don't know. Like I just want to do everything with other people.
Yeah.
And like, especially Scott, obviously. But it's just different personalities.
Should we finish off with one? Well, I'm trying to look at these questions to see if anyone else...
I think this one could be maybe a good one to tie it up.
Okay.
And I don't know that we necessarily have to answer the first part, but where your family's at with church, and is it hard if you're not on the same page? And maybe we've kind of already spoken to this, but like I can talk first to give y'all time to think. Like I said, pretty much every area of my life is very 50-50 at this point. And like, that's true about my family, like my immediate family too. I think there were times when it was hard during the transition. I don't think it's hard now. And I think that's simply because like, I've really tried to be at a point where like, I don't know, maybe this is a weird thing to equate it to, but like, it's almost, to me, it's like, okay, if we're a different religion or if we have different political beliefs or different whatever it is, it's like that just makes us all better and unique, and like we can celebrate those differences and like respect it too. Like I also don't question, like, let's say in the future, like my kids are having a baptism, like I would still invite people, like I would still invite all of you guys too, because it's just an event happening in our lives. And like, if you didn't want to come, I wouldn't be offended. If my family didn't want to come, I wouldn't be offended. But like, I want to let you make that decision. So I don't know if that kind of is a tangent, but like, I guess for me personally, it doesn't have to be hard. And so I've tried really hard to not make it hard. It's like, it's okay that we're all at different places.
Yeah. Okay. I guess I'll go. Because my family is about like 50-50 split. A few of us have left. Several of us are like have stayed. And it is really hard because I don't know. On one hand, I went into this kind of understanding that I am the person who changed things up, and therefore like I want to do as little as possible to disrupt like our family dynamic, to like change things with us, like keep things the same, because I'm the one, like even if I'm uncomfortable, that's like my fault because I changed. I do think that's a little like problematic of thinking, but it's kind of just like where I came to terms with, like, if I want to have a relationship with my family members, I need to figure out how I fit into their world still versus like making them change themselves to fit into mine. And because my like reason for leaving didn't necessarily have to deal with like my own happiness and like human rights and everything like that, that was very like fine. I think for other people that is more of a struggle because of that, and sometimes those beliefs can be really like, you know, obviously harmful to people. But I'll say like the hardest thing in my opinion about it all with like my experience with my family is that we don't talk about it. And I'm saying this like knowing that they're listening to this probably right now. So I hope I'm not like exposing anybody or anything. But like, I think when you are afraid to talk about things, it makes it really hard for those people who want to talk about things, example me, to feel like a close bond with someone. And so I have felt myself kind of, you know, continuing to grow my relationship and get closer with my family members who have left the church, simply because since we have similar ideas, we are allowed to be open with each other and like build that closeness. Whereas family members who don't want to talk about it, don't care about talking about it, nobody even asked me about what my experience was with this and how I was doing through it all.
Yeah.
It makes me feel like, one, do you care about me? Two, like, do you care about my thoughts? Like, am I not allowed to have differing opinions from you? And then it just creates this like surface level relationship where it's like we can't go any deeper because
we're not
you're
really
always
talking about things.
Exactly. So that's been really hard to kind of like wrestle with or like just to come to terms with and navigate and learn how to still have those close relationships with my family. I'm still working through it. You know, like we're still working it out and in the middle of all of that. But at the end of the day, like I think I also know like that my family is not one to just like kick us to the curb, and I never had that experience where my family was like threatening to disown me or like everything like that because of like my choices about that. So
Yeah.
it's kind of, I don't know, it's hard to deal with.
I think that's a really important thing to share though, because like even when you were talking, I was like, yeah, your family's where mine was at like 2-3 years ago, and it was hard because it was hard when we weren't talking about things. And so like again, don't want to beat a dead horse, but like just freaking talk about things. Like ask people how they're doing. It makes such a difference. So.
Yeah. So
So my family, I have a smaller family than everyone. It's just my parents and my sister, and everyone's a member. The only feelings. What's the question? Like pressure or just like.
No, is it hard if you're not on the same page?
Okay. I don't think it's hard. Like, the only thing that I think about is like if I left, I would feel really bad because I know that my parents would feel disappointed, and not even in me. Like, there's no feelings of like between us. I would feel really sad because I know they would feel sad, and like I know that they would feel like they failed in some way for certain, like just for like teaching and like having me keep faith. And like I'm really close with my family, and I am very like, as you can tell from me like crying earlier just about like Kenzie, like I'm just very like empathetic in general. So like I would just feel sad for them because I know they would feel sad about themselves, and I'm like, don't feel sad,
Everyone be happy.
Yeah,
like we're good.
and that's the only thing.
Kenzie, what about you?
I have some siblings that have left, but some family that is still in, and for the most part, like they've been very supportive. I feel like at the beginning, I know there were some family members that I felt like weren't taking me seriously when I said that I was like struggling, and I left because I was struggling. And then like when my older sister decided to leave, it was like every time she was over, it was like, let's talk to Sydney and see how she's doing and like have these deep conversations. But for me, like I felt like it was kind of brushed to the side for some people, but for the most part, like everyone, I like we talk about it a lot, and I think everyone is good about giving me space to like be my own person.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you have interest, like a different experience because you come from a more nuanced family where there's like more room for like creating your own choices in your own life? Or like the other part of it I could see is maybe if like family members, well, I'm nuanced, I believe those things too, and I still stay in the church, so why are, you know, like, or is any sort of that pressure, like, did you experience?
I think at least on the outside, like people, my family is more supportive because they are more nuanced and progressive. The thing where it gets tricky is, like, for example, when I was like giving the example about like Joseph Smith, like to me he's a joke, but to someone else he's like a prophet. Like that is where like sometimes I feel like my sister and I say things where it's like, oh, that could be like,
Maybe that was too
offensive
far.
to someone who is a believer, but it's like that's also our belief. So it's like, I don't know. It's just there is definitely that line between like, okay, this is spiritual for you guys.
Yeah.
And this once was spiritual for us too. And that's why like I think we can talk about it because it's like it was once important to us too, but now it's just not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
All right.
This was good. Hopefully y'all kind of feel like, because it's just like such a reality that like mixed faith or mixed belief in anything is like real in relationships now. So I think it's important to just even have these discussions of like, this is how you can navigate it. And like we talked about before, maybe at the very beginning, like we all have a lot of that in our lives now. So I feel like we're pretty adapt to talking about it. So
Yeah.
this was good. Hopefully y'all found some value in this. At least a little bit.
Yeah.
But
At
yeah.
the end of the day, just final thoughts. At the end of the day, like, you know, there's so much more about a person than just their spirituality. So if you have a friend and you're struggling trying to figure out how to be friends with them and they've left the church, you know, ask them a question not about church.
Yeah, just literally be
and
their
like
friend.
grow your relationship doing things outside of religion that maybe like, you know, can strengthen your bond in that way. Hopefully that helps.
Totally. I love that. Well,
Cool.
come back every Monday. You can listen on Apple, Spotify, anything. You can watch us on YouTube if you want to see our cute little faces. And leave a little review, subscribe. We'll see you next week.
All right.
Bye.
Peace out.